Mean Girls, based on the Broadway show Mean Girls, which is based on the movie Mean Girls, which is based on a book. Samantha Jane and Arturo Perez Jr. are helming this film as directors, while the screenplay is still written by Tina Fey. So if you're familiar with the original Mean Girls from 2004, this follows basically the same plot of the fish out of water story, the girl from Africa, Katie Harris, as she adjusts to her wild jungle-like experience in high school. So real quick, I'm a big fan of Mean Girls the musical. I have loved that musical since it first got released. The soundtrack I am obsessed with. I've listened to it on a loop over and over and over. I also really like the original movie. I find it really funny, very entertaining. This film disappointed me. And honestly, one of the reasons I think I was so disappointed is because I'm such a big fan of the musical. But let's talk about some positives first. The performances all around are actually really good with one exception. Regina George is great. Damien and Janice actually in this are done very well. I love the performances. They're still very iconic and entertaining in their own way, so I really wanted to highlight that. Renee Rapp plays Regina George and also played Regina George on Broadway, and she delivers an excellent performance as expected. Overall, vocally, across the board, this was actually done really well. Again, with one exception that I'll talk about later. If you know nothing about the musical, you've never even heard the soundtrack before, you might actually find this pretty fun. A lot of the screenplay is actually completely lifted from the 2004 version. There are certain scenes that are word for word of what the character said in the original film, which is a little repetitive, but also could be seen as a fun homage, and I can see people really enjoying that. It's also still funny. Like, it was very entertaining. I was laughing throughout the film. There's a lot of fun nostalgia plays in this film, not just with repeating lines from the original, but also with some of the returning actors from the original film, one of which actually really surprised me and made me pretty happy to see. I also really enjoyed a lot of the visual choices with this film. The storytelling aspect of that is done very well, and it actually does a few things to make it feel like a stage adaptation. For example, the way the film opens and closes, I'm not going to spoil it, but the way that the narrators are kind of telling the story is really clever to me, and I actually really liked that. Another huge positive not to be overlooked is the choreography by Kyle Hinagami. The choreography is a huge part of the visual storytelling, and even when the music isn't fully living up to what it should, the choreography really hammers home that visual aspect of the film. Okay, let's get into why this film was disappointing for myself, and that is the music. Not the vocalists. The vocalists actually across the board were very impressive, with the exception of one person, and that was Katie Harris, performed by Angourie Rice. It's a bit of a shame because she is surrounded by extreme talent, especially Regina George being off of the Broadway production. But she just doesn't bring it. She takes a lot of down options, like she can't hit the notes that were in the original show. The most obvious one being in Revenge Party. That one's actually been going around the internet, so I feel like you've probably seen that. But if you haven't, she takes a lot of downward options where the original Broadway show keeps going up and building tension. This one just lacks that. Overall, her performance as well as Katie Harris, I wasn't really buying. You can't help but compare this to the original a little bit, and Lindsay Lohan's performance was iconic in the original, and this just doesn't really live up to that. I feel like it still could and be its own thing, which is what a lot of these characters do. Janice and Damien specifically are very much their own versions of these characters, but it's done so well. Like, their performances are excellent. But yeah, Katie Harris just didn't do it for me. I wasn't buying her vocals, I wasn't buying her performance. So that's definitely a big detriment. Your lead actor is supposed to be performing this character that is the center part of the show, is your main character. And she's just not living up to the performance, especially when around her, everybody else is giving gold. Like, these people can sing, they can act, I'm loving it. And then she comes on screen and I'm like, well, not enjoying this. But okay, the music. One of the best parts of Mean Girls the Musical is the genre and style of its music. It's very rock and pop kind of blending together with a musical theater style. And it creates this just ecstatic energy that pumps you through the whole show. There's even this great guitar riff that starts off the show that returns throughout at certain thematic moments, and this movie doesn't have it. I was shocked. I was really expecting just a full score with this iconic guitar riff, louder than ever before, backed up like never before, and just an epic version of it. And that didn't happen. The riff isn't even in here. It's in the background of World Burn for, like, the moment that it's supposed to be in World Burn. But it doesn't really make sense thematically at this point, because the whole idea is that's supposed to be a minor reprise of that riff. So the fact that we haven't heard it at all throughout the movie, and then it shows up in one song in the background, that doesn't really do anything. This musical style also opts for some weird choices. There's actually an a cappella section during Stupid with Love, which was really odd to me. Stupid with Love overall just didn't sound like Stupid with Love. They go for a much softer tone, a very, very, very pop-centric, removing the rock elements and the musical theater elements at points, and just really going for a soft pop kind of vibe. And that, to me, doesn't match Mean Girls at all. There's not really another way to say it, but the music just doesn't fit. The original Broadway version does an excellent job of melding the style of that story with a musical style. And the fact that this kind of betrays that betrays the whole film overall. It's very disconnecting, to say the least, and I think if you go in expecting this to be to the caliber of the Broadway show, you're going to be very disappointed, like I was. I feel like I'm hating on this movie more than I meant to. The movie's really not that bad. There's not a lot to hate about it. The vocal performances are still great, with the exception of Katie Harris, and acting choices and character arcs are great. Well, the character arc of Katie is still good. It's the same as the original, it's just she doesn't deliver it as well. For hardcore Mean Girls fans that really love the original movie that maybe have no ties to the musical, you're probably really going to enjoy this. But for me, it was pretty disappointing. I'm giving Mean Girls a 6 out of 10. It's really not that bad. Janice and Damien are really fun to watch, and they kind of steal the show in every scene that they're in. The plastics are great. Regina especially does an excellent job, as you would expect. She was on Broadway. But the performance from your lead actor needs to be better. And when you have a Broadway score that is so excellent, you need to live up to that. And this film just didn't do that for me. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of Mean Girls, or what's your favorite movie musical. Subscribe for more reviews very soon, and until then, so long, friends.